Good evening. Welcome to the Hayward City Council meeting, June 27th, 2024, 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And before I get started, I'd like to first make an announcement, actually two announcements. It's hot in this room. And the reason why it's hot in this room is because our HVAC is not working, and we have fans on. And so I just didn't want, Council Members Armenio, Council Member Roach, and Council Member Bonilla show up the left side of the dais for not wearing a coat. So I'm just saying, are you wearing a coat? Yes. Council Member Andrews is also wearing a jacket, so, Yeah, so anyways, we do have fans on, and everything is good. All right. But before, my second announcement is Council Member Goldstein is joining us at home. We are evoking AB 449, emergency circumstance. He is at home this evening because he will be going into a medical procedure tomorrow, and so he has to be home this evening. So with that said, do we need to take a vote before? Okay, so before we proceed with the meeting, I need to have a motion from one of the council members.
I'll move the item.
Moved by Council Member Andrews.
Second.
Seconded by Council Member Roach. And if there are no objections, it unanimously passes. So now we can proceed, right? Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Council Member Roach to please do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews. Present. Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Present.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Present.
Councilmember Roach. Present. Councilmember Syrup.
Present.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Here.
Mayor Salinas.
Present. Thank you. And Mr. City Attorney, if we have a closed session announcement, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The council convened at 5:30 with all members present, no public speakers. And in referring to the posted agenda for the closed session, the council addressed four matters. First, with respect to property negotiations.
Mr. City Attorney, apparently we don't hear you, so we're going to see if we can turn up the volume on your microphone. So if you can stand by for a moment. And I don't know if it might be the fan or it might be we just need to turn up the volume, because my volume seems to be sounding pretty good.
Is this one better?
Oh, there you go. Yes, absolutely. So sorry about that. Go ahead.
So first, with respect to property negotiations at 1069 B Street and 22695 Foothill, the council received a report from staff and unanimously gave direction to staff. On the other property matter, the council, and that's related to 558 B Street, the council also received a report from staff and gave direction unanimously to staff. As to the two litigation matters, the council heard reports from staff on those litigation matters and took no reportable action. That completes the report.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to move on to public comments. This is reserved for anybody in the audience or online that would like to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda. Is there anybody online or in the audience that would like to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda? And I don't see anybody online, and I don't see anybody here in the chamber that would like to make a public comment. So I'd like to close public comments and now turn to the city manager for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a few announcements this evening. First and foremost, I wanted to share that, I guess I'll do that one first. Okay, we'll do this one first. Okay, I wanted to share that each year, in collaboration with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, BOSCA, the City of Hayward offers the Earthcapades program to Hayward Elementary Schools free of charge. The Earthcapades program designs educational school assemblies and presents water conservation, environmental awareness, and water science in the form of interactive stories, comedy, and music. In FY 22 and 23, 15 elementary schools participated in the program, including All Saints, Tyrell Elementary, Stonebrae Elementary, Roos Elementary, Lauren Eden, St. Bede Catholic School, Longwood Elementary, Fairview, Eldridge, St. Joachim's, Eden Gardens, Faith Ringgold School of Science and Arts, Palmacia, Harder, and Glassbrook Elementary Schools. A total of 27 assemblies were performed and 6,134 students participated. From a survey of teachers, the feedback was overall very positive, with over 93% of faculty rating the program as excellent and very good, 73% rating the teacher resources as extremely useful and 100% requesting the program to continue in the future. You can see here some pictures from those assemblies and presentations, and there's some of the survey results. So just wanted to share that, and thank you to BOSCA for that partnership with our staff. Secondly, that was a lovely end to that comment. I wanted to, a couple exciting announcements regarding our library and Heritage Plaza. The Heritage Plaza project that was constructed as part of our new library and community learning center was recently honored with the 2023 Merit Award by the Northern California chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. This award recognizes the plaza's innovative design and sustainability that created a beautiful open space for downtown residents and visitors. Staff is very proud of this accomplishment, and we look forward to continuing the efforts to enhance the urban landscape for the benefit of all Hayward residents. And last but not least, I am very pleased to announce that the city has officially been awarded the prestigious LEED Platinum certification for our 21st Century Library and Community Learning Center. This achievement showcases the city's commitment to sustainability and innovation. The LEED Platinum certification is the highest level of recognition offered by the U.S. Green Building Council and acknowledges the city's dedication toward a greener future for all Hayward residents. So some great work by all of our teams working on those projects, and so just wanted to share that with the council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to move on to our consent item, and then I believe we have council members wanted to make a comment, a quick comment on item 5, 6, 10, and 19. So I'll since they're going to be brief comments, can I have a motion, a second, and then I'll call for questions.
I'll move it.
A move by Councilmember Syrup.
Second.
A second by Councilmember Roach, and then Councilmember Bonilla, since you had 5 and 6 first, and then I'll go to Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you. My question related to item 5, and they're similar for question 6, is what type of assistance is available for families and homes that are facing financial hardships and perhaps are on the delinquent list for their garbage bills and or water and sewer?
So the households that are ranked as low income, they can benefit from programs that are available on the water side. As I mentioned last time I was before you, there is a substantial discount that is given to the fixed part of the service part of the water side, a 65% reduction. About 10% of our households take advantage of that. I am working on a report because you commented on it last time to submit to council that basically talks about the programs that we have, how many people participate, what the outreach is like, and what other utilities, including privately owned utilities like PG&E, participate in the programs and offer those services.
Thank you. So if people wanted to enroll or learn more about those programs, how would they go about doing that?
They just get in touch with the Revenue Division of Finance Department, and the staff will assist them.
Thank you. And then for these accounts that are delinquent, would we ever like stop collecting their trash because they're so delinquent?
We never stop collecting trash because that has
Great.
health consequences. Basically, this is a tool that we use to inform people that owe some money, and they come in quickly. 80% of these costs have been paid over the past, few months since we started the notification process. There is a small amount left. Like on the water side and the sewer side, as you know, our revenues are in tens of millions of dollars, but the outstanding delinquency is about $120,000. And there is still time for customers to come in and pay some of that. And I fully expect that 50% of those costs to be paid off and not shown as an assessment on the tax roll.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Certainly.
Would the same thing apply for sewer and water? That no matter how delinquent they are, they wouldn't be shut off because of a health and safety issue?
For these developments that are on the tax roll, yes, because these are mostly multifamily developments, and shutting off water can cause real hardship to
Thank
some
you.
of the tenants.
Excellent. Thank you. Those are my questions for 5 and 6, and I had a question on 10. As it relates to this emergency management plan being updated, it says there's $160,000 for on-call emergency management consulting. What would be an example of some of that consulting, and does that include conducting an exercise and a test of the plan to validate that it would actually work?
I don't believe I see our fire chief on the call. I think he's out of the office this week. But yes, I mean, those tabletop exercises with staff, we have done, different, if you're familiar with emergency operations plans, different logistics, finance, operations. So having different readiness exercises with each one of those operational groups. And then again, also doing consulting if there is in fact an actual emergency in progress, or helping us with applications to FEMA for assistance, things like that. So it would be kind of all of those different services. And I believe that contract is like a not to exceed. So as we use it each year.
Excellent, thank you. I just think that work is so important, especially considering our community is, in earthquake zone, and we have so many natural hazards and disasters that we need to prepare for. So making sure that we have an updated plan and that it's being tested regularly, it's very good. So thank you for that. And that's all I have on the consent calendar for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Also responding to item number 10, should the referral for vulnerable needs registry go forward tonight, would that be included as part of the updated emergency management plan?
Potentially. Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't have the staff here with the technical expertise of where that would get integrated, but for certain that registry would be integrated into our dispatch center, so that those addresses are flagged. So when police and fire or other first responders are responding, we would have an advance warning of some of the situations in those residences and addresses.
Got it. And I think I asked just to clarify, has the scope of work already been defined, or is this to engage with them to define that scope of work and then complete it?
I think some level of the scope of work has been defined, which had led to the cost proposal, but I think there's probably some flexibility in there for additional work items as well.
Great, thank you. And then just to comment on item number 19, we will be adopting a resolution adopting a local road safety plan tonight. And I just thought this report was fantastic, and I really wanted to commend staff for putting it together. It's really charting a progressive path forward towards making our streets more bikeable, more walkable, and safe for communities. And so, I wish we could spend all night talking about it and presenting it, but I'm just really excited to move this item. Thank you.
Thank you. So moved by Councilmember Syrup. I'm sorry. Yeah, Councilmember Andrews, and then Councilmember Terminator. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. Did the names of residents need to be listed? I understand a lot of these are LLCs for the sewer item, but do the names, or in the trash item, but did the names of delinquent fees need to be listed on there? Can the address be on there only?
Off the top, I don't believe so, so we'll look into it. And if they are not necessary next year, we are not going to include them.
That'd be great, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you. Just two quick notes regarding the airport. On item number 18, we are now selling unleaded gasoline, unleaded aviation fuel. So that's something that's very important, especially with our work towards climate action change. So thank you to APP over there. And then also just a quick note on item number 22, the industrial section of the expansion, or what, SkyWest. Montecito has a good plan, so I think it's something that's going to move our airport forward. So, a couple of notes. Good for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. So the consent calendar has been moved by Councilmember Syrup, seconded by Councilmember Roach. Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and just for the record, no public comment on the consent calendar.
Yes, and I don't see any public comment online either, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Aye.
And Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, and we are also pulling, we're continuing item number
24?
24, yes. So we will be continuing item number 24 on the agenda, so. Okay. With that said, next item is, let me see, is our work session, item number 23, which is the community survey results. Receive presentation of community survey results and consider potential ballot measure for future facilities needs. And I believe Assistant City Manager Clausen will launch this.
I will be incredibly brief. What we have here this evening, we'll hear from FM3 Research, who conducted this survey. I'm not sure if the city manager wanted to give any lead in here, but this item was something that we brought to the Council Budget and Finance Committee in May, who gave us the permission to go out and seek some information from the community. So Miranda with FM3 is here to present that to you all tonight. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, all right. I hear myself.
And I will apologize, one, for interrupting, and two, there's no chance that this is fitting on 5 slides, so be warned.
We tried. So my name is Miranda Everett. I'm a senior vice president at FM3 Research. We've done several community surveys for the city over the last few years. This is a voter survey dealing more directly with a potential extension of Measure C. So before I dive into the results, just very briefly to summarize sort of the high-level findings, folks are pretty satisfied with quality of life here and with city services more specifically, although those numbers have been eroding fairly steadily over the last 15 years or so that we've been measuring it. At the same time, about 7 in 10 see a need for additional new funding in principle, and about as much agree that they would vote yes on a measure when provided with potential ballot measure language. The slides will also show you sort of their highest priorities and the things they value the most in terms of service delivery. And then we'll talk a little bit too about what we feel would be necessary to help contribute to success of the measure, chiefly public communications and engagement. So, starting with our methodology on the next slide. This was conducted May 30th through June 5th. Our sort of sample universe was anyone likely to participate in the November 2024 election. It's a fairly broad swath of voters because that's a presidential and lots of folks turn out. We spoke to 630 folks by phone call, email, text message, driving them to an online interview or to a phone interview with a live interviewer. The survey was available in English and Spanish, and that gives us a margin of error around 4%. On the next slide, you'll see some basic issue context. So starting with, next slide, please. The classic kind of pollster question, are things headed in the right direction? Or are they off on the wrong track? Here we have a plurality who say things are headed in the right direction, 43%. Pretty narrow one though, about 8 points more favorable than unfavorable here. I will say this compares very well to some of your neighbors in the region and up and down the West Coast. To have people be sort of split is a good place to be in that company. When we look under the hood at the demographics here, we see younger folks and more liberal folks are more optimistic, conservatives and older folks are more pessimistic, so sort of two sides of the same coin in terms of how people are experiencing life in the city. On the next slide, you can see a little bit about what's contributing to some of that pessimism for folks. Key concern, shared very broadly, 78%, calling it an extremely or very serious problem, is homelessness. And just behind that, cost of living and cost of housing more specifically, with 2/3 calling that an extremely or very serious problem. That's across voters overall. Very similar to what we see in other communities in the Bay Area. In sort of another tier just behind that, crime, traffic, and then potholes and traffic, local and freeways. So again, a similar ranking to similar cities. On the next slide, you can see some of the problems that were shared a little less broadly. Just under half calling glitter and graffiti or too many vacant properties an extremely or very serious problem for the city. Waste and inefficiency in local government and city government was a concern for about 2 and 5. Broader shares there are saying they don't know either way. They're just not as clued into that topic. The amount people pay in local taxes, also a relatively low-ranking concern, along with jobs and employment more broadly. And then a near majority saying a lack of parks and recreation options is not a problem for them. So we'll see later that is something people prioritize, but it's not because they think there's not enough. It's just that they want to kind of keep investing in what we have. On the next slide, you can see some trend data over time. The little star there is to indicate prior years where our survey sample was broader. It was all adult residents rather than just voters. But for the most part, we can see some pretty clear trends. Decreasing concern about taxes, about jobs and unemployment, increasing concern pretty steadily over time about homelessness and about crime. On the next slide, you can see one of the first questions in the survey early on was about overall opinion of life in the city of Hayward. 62% say they're satisfied with it. More folks in the somewhat category than in the very category there. But again, about a pretty favorable margin for you there with 3 and 5 satisfied and about 37% dissatisfied, and not too many folks in that very dissatisfied corner of the data. So looking at the trend data over time, you see, as we mentioned before, a broad majority are satisfied, but this figure is as low as it has been in 15 years of data. So it was as high as 85% satisfaction back in 2014, with nearly half very satisfied. And it really has, there really was a disjunction there between 2014 and 2016. And then that has continued to slip a little bit over time. And I think this is a pattern we see in some other places in the data that we'll show you in just a second as well. Here, more specifically, we asked about satisfaction with the city of Hayward providing resident services. A majority, 53%, say they are satisfied with that. Again, not too much intensity there, more people putting themselves in the somewhat category than the very, but just 38% saying they are dissatisfied with city services more broadly, and about 10% saying they don't know enough to say. As you saw on the other slide, on the other question about quality of life more generally, this is a very similar looking slide. We had a high point in 2014 with 77% satisfied with city service provision. That eroded a bit in that intervening time between 14 and 16, and has kind of eroded again between 2021 and today, down to 53%. So at its lowest figure in 15 years of data. So another question we asked that's pretty critical to exploring people's willingness to support additional funding measures is their principled sense of whether the city has a need for funding. And we asked this in 2 different ways. Half the sample heard Does the city need additional funding to maintain essential city services? The other half heard improve, wanted to kind of test the theory of whether people kind of want to keep going on a current course or actually kind of invest and increase in what we have. And we see either way, 7 and 10 or more say the city has at least some need for additional funding. That's a good place to be when you're looking for a simple majority measure. And notably, there's marginally more intensity. That great need share is a little bit higher when we frame it as improvement to quality of life, which I think makes sense given that we've seen some erosion on that number over time. So next we turn to a ballot measure itself. So our strategy here was to test the 75 words as it may appear on the ballot, something as close as possible, knowing that that is the one piece of information everyone will have before they check yes and no. That's kind of sets a baseline, lets us know how are people feeling about this when they're confronted with that legalese. Do they feel like the city needs funding? Do they feel like the mechanism is right? Do they feel like the things we're saying we'll spend it on are aligned with them? And on the next slide, you can see the results of that, or you'll see the 75 words that we tested. You'll note that we tested 2 different sunset terms, a 30-year and a 20-year, just to see if that decade of difference is really notable to voters. And here you see the results. Measure to extend Measure C has support from more than 2/3 of Hayward voters when we say 30 years. When we say 20, it's as high as almost 80%. So this is a really fantastic place to start. Kudos. 48% rather, saying they would definitely vote yes right out of the gate is a really strong place to be when you have a measure that needs 50% plus 1. And then notably, you can see the opposition is narrower on the 20-year side, but is still 40-point margin of support on the 30-year side. So on the next few slides, we have just some of the demographic data, because of course it's not a monolith in the city. But I think the key takeaway here is that support for a measure is very broad across all the demographics you'll see here. 7 in 10 men, 3/4 of women, as much as 89% of voters under 30, and even 59% of the most skeptical set of voters in that 50 to 64 range. So very strong positive numbers here across some key demographics. On the next slide, you can see that by race and ethnicity and household income. Again, similar punchline, very broad, very strong support across these demographic lines. And then by party and ideology, which is often the place where we see the strongest distinctions, 80% support from registered Democrats in the city, 65% from all those folks who are no party preference or a third party. And then even among Republicans, the measure has support from 54%. That is a very striking finding and very helpful, even in a community where they're less numerous, to see that across party lines, this is something that has majority support. So on the next slide, you can see, again, some details here, the need for funding. Those who see a great need are much more likely to support a measure than those who don't. Those who are satisfied with quality of life and dissatisfied, majorities support it either way, although those satisfied are a little more strongly in our corner than those who are not. And on the next slide, you can see a share of voters who are dissatisfied with city services but said they would vote yes on a measure. That's about 1/4 of voters. They're disproportionately lower income, under 30, renters under 50. Those are folks who kind of see a need and seem to believe that a measure would potentially address it. On the next slide, you can see we asked yes voters why they would vote yes. About 1/4 of them said we should just continue to approve the city, just a general sense that this kind of funding would help us move forward. And then a more specific set of responses having to do with potholes, infrastructure, safety and policing, things like that. And those are a few verbatim responses from some of the supporters there. You can see some exclamation points. And on the no side, we see a pretty 2 key themes, and they're the ones I pretty much always see on measures like this, either opposition to raising taxes in principle or mistrust in government in general. Those are the 2 kind of broadest rationales that are coming to the fore for opponents. And on the next slide, you can see a few examples of things they were saying. Some people talking about inflation, talking about just taxes in general in California, things like that. So a really critical piece of the puzzle is this next section. This is where we talk about the priorities voters have for the measure or for things that the city could be doing with additional funding. Everything on this slide is valued by 7 and 10 or more, calling it extremely or very important. If you add that shade of blue for somewhat important, you're getting 90% plus who are saying these things are important to them as investments. Top of the list are things like emergency response times, fire protection, potholes, natural disaster preparation, and street safety for all types of users, as well as just more generally protecting the city's fiscal stability. Storm drains and homelessness services also in a sort of top tier. Moving down the list a little bit more, you can see that 7 and 10 or so value some of the other services like police patrols, senior services, after school and summer programs, collaborations with police and community, and low income services. So broad mix of services here that are sort of in a similar tier with one another and very broadly valued. Moving down the list a bit more, still 2/3 to majorities, but less intensity. You can see that darkest shade of blue gets a little bit more narrow here. These are things like removing overgrown vegetation to reduce fire risk, space at libraries, climate response, fiber optic, and then you start to see some of the repairs that are needed to city buildings on this sort of third set in these tiers. And near the bottom of the list, you start to see things like upgrading city buildings for earthquake safety, for disabilities, upgrading police and fire stations to provide locker rooms for women, building a new fire station, building a new family center, and updating the shelter or public works facility. Very common in our research to see that when you're talking about building something new, it sounds expensive. It sounds like architectural renderings and things like that that are a little more distant to the average person. And so instead, we saw on all those prior slides, what are the things that go on in those buildings? Stuff that people really value. Police protection, fire protection, senior services, children's story time, all of that stuff they really value. But when we zoom out and talk about buildings, there's just a little less intensity around it. And I think on this next slide, you can see some of the stuff that is lower down on the list even further are some of these other things that have to do with building and upgrading physical structures. So you can see at the bottom of the list is the quiet study and community meetings and replacing the police headquarters with a public safety center. So talking about what will be done is one thing, talking about how we get there, what happens inside is another. And I think this survey kind of points the way toward what people value and how we communicate that and how important that can be. So next slide shows the impact of some additional information. We had the vote question that I showed you before, the 20 and 30 year. We kind of averaged those together to show you the initial vote there is at 73% yes, very positive place to be. After some information in favor of a measure, that lifts to 75% with 52% in the definitely yes category, so very positive and shows that you are able to really bring people in your corner if you can communicate more about the measure and why it's needed. But we also threw ourselves some critical information, and you can see that that had quite an impact. That did reduce support to 63%. Still a comfortable margin for passage, but it does show a little bit about how important it is for us to communicate the need for this, to talk about and engage with the community about the priorities and values that they shared earlier on to sort of mitigate against some of those critiques we might expect. Great. So then we looked at segmentation of the electorate. This is one way that we kind of look at not just how people are moving, but the kind of stickiness of their opinions. We had 30% who consistently said they would definitely vote yes. 36% are in that swing category. Those are folks who may need more information. And you can see sort of the demographics on the left side. The folks who are with us most frequently are older, typically more liberal voters. On the right side, more critical folks are more conservative, and then a really diverse set of folks in the middle who are open to receiving more information and shifting opinions throughout. So this takes us to conclusions. That was a lot of information in a short time, but I will conclude by just wrapping up what we heard. So as we shared before, really good news that majorities of voters are satisfied with quality of life here and provision of city services. But this is at their lowest level in 15 years, and that kind of softness of satisfaction has been growing. At the same time, and I think two sides of the same coin, is that people are seeing a need for additional funding, either to increase or maintain city services. So the need is very clear. That's why we feel, with a focus on priorities voters share most widely, a Measure C extension is really well positioned for passage, especially if we can do that community engagement that's so needed. And we've got a few kind of supporting data points here, including especially the breadth of support across demographics. And again, that top priorities include fire protection, street safety, potholes, storm drain repair, disaster preparation, lots of things that people, the workers in your buildings will do day in, day out. So again, lots of data. Happy to take questions, talk about next steps.
Thank you, Ms. Everett. Before I turn to council for questions, I'd first want to open up for public comment. This is a work session, and I don't see anybody in the audience with a public comment, but I'm sure online is want to have questions, and I do see a hand up. TJ from Hayward Concerned Citizens. You can go ahead and key up anytime.
Hey there, it's TJ with HCC. Just a couple of comments I wanted to make on this. Well, that information was really fast, but I wanted to say in general, I am in support of the extension of Measure C if it's used for what it's meant for. That the way it's written on the ballot is pretty lengthy. My understanding is, however the money is collected from the taxpayers, the funds go in the general fund anyway. So I guess I would be looking for assurance that the funds are going to be used for the purposes intended, because I know in the past, it's we can vote on any measure we want, but then the city council gets to choose how those funds are going to be used. So that's really important to me. And also, I think when you say, when you talk about building new buildings, let's say the why. If it's talking about, do the fire need we are asking for the new buildings. For police, for example, they can have sway voters more to know how those funds are truly going to be used.
Okay, I think you're breaking up and coming and going in the call, but I think we understood your general gist of your comments. And let me see if there's anybody else online that would like to make a public comment. Seeing none, I'd like to close public comment and then open up for council questions. And I see Mayor Pro Tem Andrews with her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, FM3, for your presentation and doing this survey. I might have other questions later, but I just have a couple of quick questions. So for the cost of living seems to be one of the items identified as high priority for us to focus on. For cost of living, is it also tied to the cost of housing and lowering, is it lowering fees? Like how do other cities address that cost of living item?
Yeah, so we did ask cost of living and cost of housing, both in the survey. It's a closed-ended question, so we didn't get to ask people a little more about, which factors of cost of living are you thinking of? But we do know, especially in the Bay Area, a huge driver of cost of living is housing. It's a big percentage of the average person's daily budget. So we know that number often moves in tandem. We can look at the demographics and see what differences there are, but typically we see that, for younger voters, for renters, for people who are more cost sensitive, those are key concerns, but that's, we saw it ranked second. It's a really highly shared concern across the community.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how does the city address cost of living if cost of housing is separated, and what are the things we can do? I mean, I know potholes was identified as well, and if we have better street maintenance, it's lower cost on your vehicle or your bike, but just what are some of the things we need to focus on to get that item?
Yeah, so it's a big policy question in terms of survey constructions. Sometimes we include things that the city has a little less direct power over than, say fixing potholes. Sometimes we include quality of schools or things like that just to sort of give us a ranking. Where are the things where the city has the most leverage? Where is there the most kind of concern? And we do know that cost of living has really emerged above a lot of other issues that are sort of day-to-day bread and butter issues that the city takes care of. So it's something that's in the mix. There are different levers you might have. They might not be as strong as ones that the state or federal government might have, or companies or things like that. But that's why we include questions where it's not something you can so directly solve on your own, but it shows you where it ranks alongside the things that you can.
Okay, and then our homelessness count has actually gone down by 22%. And from this survey, it still seems a high priority item, obviously. So from the data, is it showing that they want to see more services or more facilities or other programs? Would you say is a higher?
The 22%, what was the figure you were?
Oh, from the last point in time count, it went down 22% in our city.
Yeah, so in this survey, we didn't dig too deeply into, causes of homelessness and concerns people have about it. In prior research we've done for the city and for other communities like yours, we see that's a really multifaceted issue. There's concern about litter. There's concern about the kind of humanitarian aspect. There's concern about safety and things like that. So it's a very multifaceted issue, and one where I think kind of the average person's day-to-day experience or things they hear from friends and neighbors may have a lot more impact in how they answer a survey question than the data does, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Roach. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. It's really exciting to see this data. I was curious, you said that 62% are satisfied and it's a 15-year low. How does that compare to other cities?
Yeah, I don't have the figures in front of me just at this
trends.
Second, but yeah, I think in many neighboring cities, sort of out in like Livermore, Pleasanton area, it probably compares less favorably than to Oakland or San Francisco or something like that. So you're sort of in a middle kind of tier between the two. I think to have a majority satisfaction figure in these times when people are feeling really pessimistic, and we saw a lot of key concern on some of those day-to-day issues, is a good sign. But that trend over time is the place where we have a little note of caution.
Got it. Thank you. Is there a version of this report that shows demographic breakdowns based on the answers? I know you had data at the end, but when we're talking about these different services being offered, it'd be interesting to see, as we're trying to advance towards racial justice or environmental justice, which populations answered how for which questions.
Yeah, so for every question, we have it broken down demographically. That's what this big book is here. So
do you have other copies of that?
I just have the one printed out to save trees, but you can always email us with questions and we can dig in through this really dense document and pull out some key factors too.
Okay, great. And then the sample size for this survey, it was a little bit smaller than prior surveys we had commissioned. I don't know, how much did that affect the degree of confidence? Do we feel like, I know you typically weigh the answers to make sure we have a balanced perspective across Hayward, but this number and the size of it may be a little bit uncomfortable. I'm curious how you feel about it.
Yeah, so we had over 600. 600 is usually our starting point for statewide surveys for the entire state of California with many millions of people. So 600 is a fairly robust sample size. I think in prior surveys where we had 800 or so for community approaches, that was because we had a lot more interest in really digging into the crosstabs of the crosstabs. And so here we're looking more at being efficient and streamlined and seeing if we've got a chance to put this measure forward. So we were doing that little trade-off there, but absent even those considerations, I think it's a very robust sample size for this community.
Great, yeah, and I was really impressed with the turnaround time. I mean, it felt like yesterday we were discussing it in I think, Budget and Finance, and then I asked our city manager, when can we expect it after council recess? And she said, no, it's going to be, the last meeting. Last question, when you say homelessness as one of the survey questions, is that folks that want to or see the unhoused population as an issue, or is it a fear of becoming homeless or unhoused, or is it that they're experiencing it themselves? How are we defining homelessness?
Yeah, so we didn't define it, and that's sort of the limitation of survey research, right? It's how people what the assumptions and perceptions they bring to the question, as we mentioned earlier. I think in the community survey, we asked more direct questions about experiences with being unhoused or fear of being unhoused, and here I don't know that for time we did.
It's okay if the data's not there. I was just curious.
Yeah, but we have fairly recent data in the community about
got it.
experiences personally.
Yeah, because like Councilmember Andrews said, if our unhoused population has gone down, it makes you wonder how folks are defining homelessness and if it's still such a present issue or if they're feeling it in a different way.
Totally.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow up on the homeless question, because it seems like it's more of like, what do you feel about homelessness? And given that there isn't sort of local media necessarily, it would be sort of their impression of what's happening regionally, homelessness, right? So it wouldn't necessarily, they just see it out there in the news, Oakland, San Francisco, and their concern is homelessness, whether and we don't know necessarily whether it pertains to homelessness in Hayward, just in general, that's their concern.
Yeah, it's in the question stem, is this a concern for Hayward? But we know that people kind of think broader. Yeah.
Okay. And then my other question was, we talked about like fire protection. I guess I'm a little concerned that if we go back out to extend this, it seems like the same message as the first time we came with it. So where will we be changing, because I think to the previous question, the public comment question, how do we show what we used the previous money for and that why this is potentially different? So that I just would want people to realize we actually made huge progress for what we said we were going to use that money for, and this is now what we're going to do. So that to the point of, maybe our city manager can answer that.
Yeah, I'll just jump in because I think Miranda, the research piece is what's going to inform the outreach. So from here, what we will do is engage on messaging about what we've accomplished with Measure C, what we still need to do, sort of using the themes from the research to help inform how we reach out in the community and talk about the need that still exists. So absolutely, this is just simply helping to inform the next step in the process.
And then to answer the question that, yes, it's a general tax, but what we say we're raising this for.
So I would just highlight when the council put Measure C on the ballot, there were two resolutions that got adopted. One that was the official ballot language and the legalese that was needed to place the measure on the ballot. The second was the political promise resolution that said these are the things that we're going to do with Measure C. I would expect we would do something very similar with this. It's like, here's the legal resolution we have to do, and here's the political promise resolution, which shows what the council commits to doing with the funds and what we're going to try to accomplish. And again, that's the voters would hold, they're the ones who hold the city accountable for making good on those promises. And we have, in fact, finished every project that was on that original Measure C list. So.
Okay, right. So that'll be important. Thank you very much for both of you for that. And then my other question had to do with, just the survey itself, that it was in English and in Spanish. But given that, Hayward residents are, we're 30 plus Asian now, did you consider other languages?
Yeah, it's a kind of budget trade-off as well. So we know for voter surveys, it's disproportionately folks who are at least bilingual, more so than the overall population. For community surveys, I believe we had a broader set of languages here, but it's a sort of trade-off of time and money and expediency and so on. So I think a question we asked is whether you speak a language other than English at home. And 39% said yes. Okay. So even if they're able to take the survey in English on the computer or Spanish on the phone, they may speak another language at home and just be able to do it in both.
And then when you do these surveys, because it is online or on phone, do you find, are we reaching a voter that may not be tech savvy, doesn't have a computer, doesn't have the ability to get to the survey?
Yeah, so that's why we use as many different platforms as possible. So kind of the gold standard when I started was just telephone calls, random numbers. We know that's not enough anymore, but we still include that because there are some folks who will take that landline call, that cell phone call. There are other folks who may never pick up the phone because they screen their calls, and they may respond to a text or an email. So that diversity of different ways of connecting with people is the way we sort of account for that.
Okay, and in the past, did we ever go out in person to street fairs and, get people to engage with the surveys that way, in person?
Oh, in person? Not typically for voter or resident surveys. It's a much less kind of random selection thing. Is who are the folks who are at the library? They may be qualitatively different from the folks who don't go. So, and it's also very quite a costly approach as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you. And great presentation. This was very, very informative. I had a similar question around sort of the statistical significance of the sample size. But I appreciate what you were saying is, this does seem statistically significant. So, it's 600. But I also appreciate a comment that you had just made about, these 600 weren't random, right? They weren't just people walking down B Street that we had asked what their opinions were. So can you talk a little bit about sort of the methodology or how you targeted the population that you chose to include in this survey?
Yeah, so for us, sort of a scientific survey approach is both random and representative. So it's not random in the sense that we just grab whoever off the street, but it is anyone who is a registered voter is equally likely to be selected to participate. So of the many thousands of voters, we need 600. Your chance and your chance and your chance is about the same, with variations for response rates and things like that. The other thing we do to make sure it's representative is we set quotas ahead of time, knowing the demographics from the voter survey and to a certain extent from the community survey of race and ethnicity, neighborhood level, age, gender, party registration, all those different variables to make sure that the interview composition that we're left with really reflects the distribution in the community. So if we had heard from lots of folks who are postgraduate educated, as we often do, we make sure that when we apply the weights at the end of the survey that they're not overrepresented and trending the data, pulling the data one way or another. So we do things at the front end to make sure that we're hearing from a representative group, and then when it's off by a point or two, we weight it to make sure that it's matching.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And seeing these two issues, homelessness and crime, to kind of my colleague's point, we've made what might be incremental advances in reducing homelessness, but perhaps what the community is saying is we need to do much more than what we're doing, right? Like these slight decreases, they don't see it. They still see the people on B Street. They still see the people in our community who, from a humanitarian perspective, are, perhaps not being served. So I can see, that, and I can also see how crime can be a big issue in our community as well. It's actually feedback that I've gotten from the community recently, or actually over the last year. But what's interesting is, our community really wants services to address these things, right? They want services to address homelessness. They want services to improve public safety. So I'm wondering, how we look at the nexus between those services and how those services can be better provided by improving our facilities, right? But like materially or significantly improved by improving our facilities so that, because I think to the average person, they probably don't care that our police department is in disrepair because they hope to never go there. So how will improving the police department improve the services that our community care about? I think is really the nexus that we need to make sure that we're driving in terms of the issues that they care about and how the extension of this ballot measure could directly address that and improve what they seem to be caring about in terms of the issues. And then the other thing is I'm concerned about kind of the softening of the overall satisfaction of residents in our community. So I would, and I understand why. I mean, they were very clear with what the issues are. So I think it's just, more for us as we continue to look at strategic planning and how we're prioritizing and how we're communicating to not just use this information, in terms of the extension of Measure C, but just really understanding what our community needs are today. So thank you very much for presenting this. And I think it's great to see a community that's so supportive of, in this ballot measure potentially, and improving these services. We just need to make sure that we're following through and drawing that nexus for them. But great presentation today, and thank you.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, very informative. I really liked it that you included the question script and all of the demographic and other representative data that was used. Really helped clarify for me how respondents were, the question that they were being asked and how they were responded. So I really do appreciate that. I'm wondering how much of external factors like the pandemic and just general media conversation about crime and homelessness and housing, how much of that might actually be swaying the responses. You said that when you looked at some of the other neighboring cities within the county, that they also had similar 15-year-like trends. Is that accurate, or did I misunderstand that?
Not every city, there's not every city where we have 15 whole years, but I think in a lot of clients who are kind of revisiting community surveys or doing voter surveys like this, we have seen a downward trend. And I think you're right to point to broader trends, things that you don't necessarily have control over, but are things that people experience that are being reflected in the responses. So I think you're not alone in experiencing all those factors.
Very good. And I happen to agree with Councilmember Bonilla. I think connecting what we're trying to do with what their experience of that will be, I think is going to be important. And but I'm very highly encouraged that our community recognizes and supports our efforts to continue to make improvements in the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the report. Very good report. Just a couple of follow-ups. I was also curious about the number 600. I saw it kind of low for a city our size, but then you mentioned that a California survey also has about 600, so then I don't feel too bad because we have 170,000 people, so that's very good. And there were two slides, and one of the slides, crime was number 4, and the other slide, crime was number 2, as far as problems or concerns. So I'm wondering which of the two I should concentrate on so that we can start working on increasing that lower satisfaction so it can be higher than it is positive at the moment, but it's the lowest of the last so many years. So when crime was number 2, because I think homeless was number 1, and there were 3 others on top of crime. I can't remember the slides, but maybe that's something you could look into.
Housing and cost of living. Cost of housing and cost of living.
Yeah, okay. So how can we, and maybe that's something that you could start working on, how can we start alleviating or working on some of these so that we increase the satisfaction numbers? I agree with colleague Bonilla as far as connecting the need with their concerns. So the wordsmithing is going to be very important to ensure that they know that this Measure C is going to be for something that will help them in their concerns and bring up that satisfaction. All right, so that's, and that really was all of my concerns or my comments. Will you be the one doing the wordsmithing on this particular project, or is that somebody else?
We're definitely a part of it. We see the data as a resource going forward. So we'll work with staff and the team to make sure that the things that voters have shared with us in the survey as their priorities are really reflected in how we talk about it.
All right,
Yeah.
so very good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had 3 comments, and your presentation's always really well. And I think the PowerPoint is very good. My first comment I want to make is, I think we have accomplished a lot up here in the last 4 years, right? And although the some of the satisfaction data, while they're above 60% or 50%, it is a little concerning that we've made a lot of strong inroads. I know Councilmember Bonilla said we've made incremental. I think we've made bigger than incremental successes. But I guess it's more of around messaging. And I know we have a PIO, and our PIO department is fantastic. They put a lot of great graphics out there. But I'm just thinking, maybe we need to sort of rethink how we message our successes out into public consumption. Maybe I know we've been relying a lot on social media. In fact, a lot of our key departments are using social media, fire, police, and a lot of stuff that we're doing here at City Hall. Maybe this is a conversation we start to have amongst ourselves in terms of, what more robust strategies can we do to get them to educate the community of what we're doing. I can tell you right now, I'm on the homelessness task force of the Alameda County Conference of Mayors. And I mean, Hayward literally is leading the county, on a lot of fronts. And that's why when I look at, and even not only are we leading the county in a lot of fronts, I should also say that we were the only city in the county that had a reduction in homelessness in our last point in time count. We've, that is a, how do we get that message out? Because I agree with you. At the end of the day, people see what's in front of them, And so, I thought empty buildings would come back higher than it did. But anyway, so I think that was the first comment. The second comment, the 62% satisfied with quality of life. I mean, that's still, of the 600 people, that's still a pretty significant number. And I think that there's still. Of course, there's still room to grow, but I do think that that's a significant data point. And even the 53% satisfied with city services. In the last 4 years since 2020, let's take the last 3 years, 3 years. We have been on city service overload, right? I mean, we've been providing cash grants. We've been providing, we've been, look at all of the. Services and programs that we've been launching around both homelessness, around economic development, around, ARPA funds, there's a lot of stuff that we've been doing. And so, and I know that we've been getting the word out. That's why I kind of, maybe we need to rethink how we educate the community. Also, when we go out, if we do renew this and we go out there, this will be our opportunity to really go out and educate the city what we've done and what we continue to do, because I know we have a story there, and I think our story it's a good story. I think we have been fulfilling our commitments, not only our economic commitments, but we've also been meeting our political promises, right? All you have to do is drive down West Winton and look what we launched last week. And you'll see the Fire Station 6 and the training center. Or just drive through any neighborhood and look at a firehouse. You'll see all the improvements and the enhancements. So anyways, I appreciate that. I guess my last question would be this. I guess this would be to the city manager, perhaps, and I know there's Bonnie Moss sitting out there. And I guess my last question is, so what's next steps, and where do we go from here?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So what we will do, assuming the council is supportive of staff continuing to move forward, we will begin to work with Clifford Moss and Associates, who has helped us on an outreach effort in prior years, to begin sort of that discussion with the community. On a parallel path, we are working on further fleshing out some of the facility designs and the conversations around what's needed. For example, for a new public safety facility, that and the location of that and what that facility design might look like. Continuing the Weeks Branch library assessment, continuing work on the Stack Center. So it's sort of a parallel process, and so we will continue down the road of the outreach, continue doing stakeholder interviews, starting to have conversations in the community, taking opportunities where we have them to share what we've accomplished with Measure C. And then we will come back probably in the spring and potentially do a tracking poll to see kind of how the mood of the voters is at that point. And then the council would need to make a decision next summer about no later than the first week of August in terms of placing the measure on the ballot officially. So a lot of work between now and then, but I think the staff team is very excited and optimistic at the potential to really complete the sort of the remaining facility needs that the city has and to use this funding source, which has already borne a lot of fruit for the community.
Do you know of, and I don't know, you may know this, do you know if there's any other cities or special districts or college school districts are going out to voters in the Hayward area for anything?
I haven't heard of any yet.
Okay.
But we'll see because it's a presidential year.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Well, I'm getting Councilmember Syra.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
The item says we're looking for a little bit of direction for a program going forward. Where are we going to weigh in on 20 versus 30 years?
That will be a follow-up conversation we have with the Budget and Finance Committee probably, and as we start to look at and refine facility cost estimates and what might be, and I think as we continue the community engagement process and we hear from the community, that those will be conversations we'll bring back to Budget and Finance and to the council.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, Councilmember Syra. As you were talking, and I had forgotten this when I was making my comments, I think, Hayward has some very generous voters. I don't think there's ever been a school board bond or school bond that has failed. I don't think there has been a city bond that has, or a measure that has failed. I know for myself, and I'm pretty sure everyone up here, I've always sort of protected that that generosity. And not going to voters just for anything at any point in time. When we do go to voters, at least for the city, we go to voters and we know it's very methodical, it's very deliberative, and our promises are very specific and they're very detailed. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that over the years we have gone to voters. In fact, one of the measures that we've gone to voters, we haven't even implemented yet, which is the TOT. And so we're very, I want folks to know that when we do go to voters, it's not without, I should say, we don't do it just to do it. We do it very methodically. We do it very patiently. And, and I think we use a lot of discretion when we move forward. So, and I think I have Councilmember Bonilla with one last question. Yeah.
Thank you. City Manager McAdoo, when you were describing the next steps, including the community engagement process, is there going to be an opportunity for council members to participate in some of those sessions?
100%,
Yeah.
yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, I didn't mean to have my mic on. I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you very much. And then thank you. Okay, so I'd like to close that. We are foregoing item number 24. That's going to come back to us at a later date. Moving on to public hearing. Moving on to item number 25, which is a public hearing. Adopt a resolution to approve the final engineer's report, reconfirm maximum base assessment amounts, confirm the assessment diagrams and fiscal assessments, order the levy and collection of fiscal assessments and adopt a resolution to approve funding recommendations and appropriate special revenue funds for Consolidated Landscape and Lighting Assessment District, LLAD number 96-1, zones 1 through 18 for fiscal year 2024. And I believe Director Rollman is going to launch this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to forego staff report and come straight to council and see if you have any questions regarding staff report. Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. I don't see public comment in the audience, and I don't see public comment online. So I close public comment, and I'll move for a motion.
I'll move on the item.
Moved by Councilmember Cermeño.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Ray Bonilla. Madam City Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor Salinas, I believe we have Julie.
Oh.
Roach.
Just make one comment?
Oh, yes. Go right ahead. Yeah, did I miss that? Oh, I don't see. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the comment that one of the reasons I'm supporting this and don't have any questions is because there's no impact to the general fund on this item, and I just thought that might be important for the public to understand. So I'll be supporting the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, you can take the roll.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr. Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Roach.
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño. Mayor Salinas.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And it passes unanimously. Move on to item number 26, PH 23-032, Maintenance District Number 1, public hearing. Adopt a resolution to approve the final engineer's report, confirm the maximum base assessment rate, confirm the fiscal assessment rate, confirm the assessment diagram, order the levy and collection of fiscal assessment, and adopt a resolution to approve funding recommendations and appropriate revenue and expenditure budgets for Maintenance District Number 1, storm drainage pumping station and storm drainage conduit on Pacheco Way, Stratford Road and Roos Lane for fiscal year 2024. And Director of our Maintenance Services, Mr. Rollman, is going to kick this off, but I'm going to pause Director Rollman and I'm going to forego staff report, and I'll move straight to council if they have any questions. Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. So this one I thought was actually interesting because we're in the negative for this particular district, and I think that's because a specific district ballot initiative failed. I guess I just wanted to hear, I think there are some recommendations on how to remedy that, but I just would like that explained for the public's benefit.
Sure, I can speak to that, Councilmember Syrup. So as you read through the staff report, we've already once had a Proposition 218 election for this zone a couple years back. And through some of the community conversations, we really felt like people were on the fence, and a lot of it surrounded what the funding mechanism was in terms of the amount we were going to need to raise the assessment to be able to collect the needed capital. So after the measure failed, we really kind of went back to the drawing boards and looked at what it was that we presented to the community. And I think it's one of the things we're going to work on going forward. We're going to do some additional community outreach, have some additional community meetings. And when we run the Prop 218 again, I think it's going to, the plan is to have a more palatable assessment to pay for some of the fees that are due.
Thank you. And so if, in the meantime, we're really unable to fund any of these capital upgrades at the moment until this proposition election passes?
That's correct. We've communicated with Alameda County. They have paused on the capital improvements for this specific district.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews.
I remember when this item came up, and so I was going to ask slightly different question about it. I wanted to know, was there a change in outreach that was done, or are we thinking about as we approach this community about this assessment? Are we doing more of tabling at a community event that's in this area? Is there a neighborhood meeting with the HOA? Something that's more interactive to explain the benefits of doing this assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, lessons learned. I think we tried to be aggressive going door to door, making contact with folks. We had a community meeting which was just prior to the pandemic, right when the pandemic started, was not terribly well attended. So I think all options are on the table, but we will definitely have a more robust outreach plan. I think we're going to circle in some additional departments that have done similar measures for the city elsewhere and really learn, what they've learned in different places where they were successful and where they weren't. So I think it should yield better results this time. We're hopeful.
Okay, and is it possible I can I'll still ask a question. Is it possible that you can also consider doing outreach at the Starbucks on that corner where at Stratford Industrial, that is a very popular shopping center. That whole community goes to that specific shopping center. I definitely recommend doing some outreach there if you need to get in touch with folks in this community.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you. So, do I have a motion?
I'll move the item.
Moved by Councilmember Roach. Oh, did I miss public comment? Did I miss public comment? Okay. Thank you for questions. Open public comment. I see no public comment in the chamber, and I don't see a hand raised online, so I like to close public comment. Moved by Councilmember Roach, seconded by.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. And Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Roach.
Aye.
Councilmember Syrup.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Wait.
Mayor Salinas.
Yes, passes unanimously. Thank you. Move to item number 27, PH 23-031, Maintenance District Number 2, Maintenance District Number 2 public hearing. Adopt a resolution to approve the final engineer's report, confirm the maximum base rate, confirm the fiscal assessment rate, confirm the assessment diagram, order the levy and collection of fiscal assessment, and adopt a resolution to approve funding recommendations and approve revenue and expenditure budgets for Maintenance District Number 2, Eden Shores Storm Water Buffer and Facilities for fiscal year 2024. And this is going to be Director Rollman will give this report, but I'd like to forego staff report and move straight to council for questions. Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a small note, but Director Rollman, could you please ask the consultants that published the engineer's report to update Councilmember Roach's name to Julie Roach as opposed to Julia Roach, just for posterity's sake? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Noted. Thank you.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Just a curiosity, do we ever run into residents who are low income and are not able to pay any of these assessments? And is there a program for them?
To my knowledge, we have not heard from anyone asking for a reduced rate based on income. I'm not sure if Dustin or Kelly might have feedback on something they've seen prior to me.
I've never received a request for most of these are homeowners. I think if there was a hardship, we would obviously consider that case, but we've never had anyone approach the city for any of these districts.
Well, that is good news, especially after that whole fiasco in 2008 and 2009 when people started losing their homes. So that is good news. We would have some kind of a program if we had somebody who needed it, probably, no?
That's kind of a tough one. When folks buy in these neighborhoods, they sign disclosures saying that they understand and they're willing to pay it. I would imagine, Director Ruhlman can probably speak to it more, with more accuracy than I can. There are folks that don't pay and they end up, going through a similar process as we saw earlier, and it goes on to their property tax assessment. And or when they go to sell the home, the district will get their funds. But I don't know that there's a hardship process specific for these.
Okay. Hopefully not. Hopefully we run into that.
But
Okay,
essentially, the city acts as a fiduciary in these.
Yes.
So it's not the city. It's,
We do have programs for the water bill and the PG&E bill, and et cetera. I just wonder if I'm sure we could come up with something in case it were needed.
it's possible.
Possible, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zarmeño. So I'd like to close questions on the dais, move out to public comment in the chamber. There's nobody in the chamber unless any of you two would like to make a public comment. Seeing nobody in the chamber, I see nobody online, so I'd like to close public comment. And then moved by Councilmember Zarmeño.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. And Madam City Clerk, if you could take the roll. Councilmember Roach has something very, very brief.
I would just like to make the same comment that there is no impact to the general fund on this, just for the public listening, because this is a fund paid directly by the assessment rate levied against the property. So thank you.
And that was very brief. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, you take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Vernia Jr.
Yes.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yes.
Councilmember Roach.
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño. Mayor Salinas.
Yes, and it passes unanimously. Moving on to council reports and announcements.
Point of order, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, did we skip item 24?
Yes, we did. Yes, that has been moved to another meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to move on to council reports and announcements. I did want to make two announcements. One, last week, and I failed to make this announcement last week, but last week, the City of Hayward, the Hayward Public Library, the Hayward Promise Neighborhood, the Hayward Unified School District, and a whole host of partners throughout the city has launched, I believe it is the 13th or 14th year of Words for Lunch and Breakfast 2 program in the City of Hayward. Every student under the age of 18 can go to sites throughout the city and receive a free lunch every single day until August. For site locations and for times, you can go to the Hayward Unified School District website, and I will ask the city's PIO to post the flyer. I know we've been posting flyers online, so you can go to the City of Hayward Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and you can see the information. Also, a big shout out to the library. I believe this is maybe the 8th, maybe 7th annual Words for Lunch program. So kids roughly ages 0 to about 8 or 9 can go to the downtown Hayward Library and Mia's Playground on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, get free story time, and a free lunch. And while you're eating lunch, you get free story time. I'm telling you, it's incredible, and you never know. You never know. At Mia's Playground, just one of the council members and I will show up and read a story. Right, Councilmember Bonilla? You never know. So keep your eyes open. We'll be out there. Lunch is often served right around 11 o'clock. Story time goes until 12:30, and that too is. It goes until the end of July. And I want to again thank the school district, thank the Hayward Public Library, the Hayward Promise Neighborhood, 4Cs, and a whole host of other agencies and partners in that project. And lastly, a great big shout out to the Hayward Unified School District Food Services and Nutrition Department. This department is an outstanding department, and for the last 13 or 12 or 13 years, they have been cooking breakfasts and lunches for Hayward kids. And right before the pandemic, I believe we hit our 1 millionth meal marker. And so, when we talk about making sure no child goes hungry in the City of Hayward, Councilmember Andrews, we take that pretty serious around here. So again, thank you for the school district on doing that. And I believe we might have another one. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all your updates. I wanted to give updates. Who can take a guess on what I'm going to give updates about? Keep Hayward clean and green. That's right. So July 22nd, we'll be at the 16 Barnes Court, which is I believe 16 Barn Court is our animal shelter. So we will be there. You can adopt a pet after you clean up. It will be 8 a.m. to noon, July 22nd. Please register by July 20th for that event. And then we also have, obviously, the Adopt a Block program. You can participate in that program if you want to clean up a block and have your name on a board. It's pretty cool. A lot of the council members, if you're a council member on this day, so you need to adopt a block. Just saying. And then, and I think most of us are, but Hayward Beautiful Yard Contest is also going on. So if you would like to nominate a neighbor that has a sustainable garden, we are relaunching Hayward Beautiful Yard Contest. The mayor awarded 3 awardees a few months ago, and they were very excited, and some of them are going to use those gift cards to go towards their yard. So we would love to do that program again, so please nominate your neighbor. And then also, we are looking for volunteers for the Senior Front Yard Assistance Program. A lot of our seniors need help with keeping their yards beautiful for their communities, and we're doing it before National Senior Citizens Day. So the program will take place on Saturday, August 19th, and applicants must be 62 years or older. So please nominate a senior, and please volunteer that day. It's going to be a great day for folks to help out our community. And then also I wanted to congratulate Edenhausen. I believe it's their 50th anniversary. They just did a groundbreaking at La Vista for 179 affordable housing units. So it was a great day for affordable housing. And then I also wanted to acknowledge today the County Board of Supervisors also submitted an apology for Russell City. I am impressed that they're taking that bold step. And then I also would like to make the ask for them to take bold steps in protecting our children in Alameda County. So I look forward to seeing some action immediately on protecting our children in Alameda County. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Andrews. Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it brief. I realized that I had not reported back on the 1,114th meeting of the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, so I just wanted to give a brief update to my colleagues on the council. It was my first meeting that I was able to attend. Just wanted folks to know that this is a special district and it can levy taxes, and this year we agreed that taxes will not go up. So rest assured, you're under good protection at the exact same cost. We also recommended a new compensation package for the general manager based on a stellar evaluation, and we learned a little bit about the Aedes aegypti, which is a mosquito that's making its way up from Southern California, and I want everyone to rest assured that we are prepared. So Hayward's in good hands. We have a great mosquito district, and I actually recommend that residents tour the facility if they get a chance, because it is a phenomenal public space. Thank you.
Councilmember Zermeño.
Gracias. Colleague Syrup, thank you for the work on the mosquitoes. We got to get those babies out of there. Yeah, absolutely. This Saturday, I invite everybody out there in the city of Hayward to Tennyson and Hesperian. We're going to have our 8th annual All-America Family Festival, where we celebrate the 247th birthday of the United States. So come on over, cake, the animals, a little bit of free food, and, backpacks, water bottles, a lot of booze. And then at 12, we will sing Happy Birthday USA, and then we'll have cake. Nobody was doing this. Hart used to do it at Weeks Park, but then that stopped. So come on over. Eden Mansion, Tennyson and Hesperian. And we'll see you from between 11 and 3. We're going to have, let's see, ballet. There's a ballet folklorico. There's a ballet from Vietnam. There's a ballet from Hawaii. Then there's ukulele also, and some Filipino music, along with a singer who's going to do the national anthem. I wish I could do it, but I can't. And the Boy Scouts will be presenting the flag. It'll be really good. So come on over and join us. And thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. My colleagues reminded me that I should probably report out. I'm the appointee to the East Bay Community Energy Commission. One of their biggest updates lately is they're going to be changing the name from EBCE, East Bay Community Energy, to AVA. So they'll be launching with that soon. And it was a play on Alameda plus the Valley as a way for us to be more inclusive in some of the cities that might come in to the Community Energy Commission or system in the next few years, I guess. So they've changed it to AVA, so everyone's going to have to get used to that. And then another big thing, they're going to be putting in $10 million towards electric bike adoption. So looking at a lending program for people to borrow an electric bike for up to a week or so people can actually try it in their day-to-day lives and not just sort of borrow it for a few hours here and there. And then that will also include vouchers, pretty significant vouchers for electric bikes, hoping to buy it locally in our Hayward bike shops. And so that will be rolling out as well in the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to close council reports and announcements and move on to council referrals. Item number 28 is a council referral, developing Hayward's vulnerable needs needs registry. And this is a referral from council members Syrup, Roach, and Bonilla Jr. I don't know who's going to take this. Should I have council member Syrup? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll kick it off. Just to frame the referral, the background, I'm just going to read it very quickly. It's very short. Response teams that are prepared with information about individuals with special needs, parentheses, such as the elderly, unhoused, and people with disabilities, end parentheses, provide improved response times during public emergencies. The Hayward Fire Department's Emergency Services Division currently possesses a secure database for storing resident information. However, its data is limited, and the county only provides resident information during disasters, creating more bureaucratic hurdles during life or death situations. This referral aims to expand the Hayward Fire Department's database, thereby improving disaster readiness for our most vulnerable residents. This referral requests that council direct staff to define the scope of vulnerable needs to determine which residents should be included in the registry, what information should be collected, how and when the information will be used, and how resident privacy will be protected given the diverse nature of Hayward's population. We also want them to engage with Spectrum, Community Resources for Independent Living, Meals on Wheels, Fabricio Vasquez, La Familia, South Hayward Parish, Life Elder Care, and any other relevant local service providers to create awareness of this registry and develop processes for their clients to opt in. We want to create a public-facing city webpage that would allow residents who fall within the defined scope of vulnerable needs to opt in and collaborate with the city manager's office to promote the registry's webpage. And lastly, present a report on the status of this project as part of the annual Hayward Fire Department report to council. Just a few notes I want to make on this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I wanted to thank Laura from Spectrum and Andrew from our Firefighters Local 1909 for writing in support of this initiative. I wanted to thank Chief Contreras for his feedback on the referral, and to Hayward Fire Department's Emergency Services Officer, Paul Wheeler, who showed a lot of enthusiasm for this idea and helped me scope it appropriately. One of the reasons I was eager to draft this is because he's retiring soon, and I wanted to get this referral out so he had a chance to contribute to its implementation. I hope I'm not too late. What I want to say about this referral is that this will help us understand who in our community has vulnerable needs. Not just that, but also a plan to populate that database. My hope is that this registry helps us continue to lead in keeping our residents safe, and also might be expanded to support outreach efforts for programs that the city currently operates or supports or will operate or support, so that we can share resources with our neighbors who need them most more effectively. Lastly, I want to thank my fellow co-authors, Councilmember Bonilla Jr. and Councilmember Roach, and I will turn the mic over to them. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. First, I wanted to thank Councilmember Syrup for bringing this referral forward. I was very happy to support it and jump on board to sign the referral with him. I think this is needed now more than ever. We've seen post-pandemic that a lot of the group programs that seniors may have frequented before, like congregate meal programs, have not seen the numbers come back as we have pre-COVID. And those are the kind of programs that would allow seniors to be seen by other people and potentially, have people alerted to changes in their behavior, changes in their medical needs. And so this is so needed so that we can make sure we are responding to our most vulnerable in this community. And I'm really grateful that Councilmember Syrup took the initiative to do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to thank Councilmember Seibert for his leadership in this space. I think we've talked about this, tonight, and it came up in the survey, and it keeps coming up again. So I think it's so timely. We live in an earthquake-prone city. We live in a city that's prone to other disaster risk, and we need to be prepared. Making sure that our community is prepared for the inevitable, I think, is crucial and timely, and it's clearly a priority for our community. They're asking for more disaster preparedness and disaster readiness. After all, we have a fault named after us. That's a ticking time bomb. And if people really want to understand more about the fault and the catastrophic damage that will occur when the fault erupts, they should, visit the USGS's website. They've done scientific modeling through a Hayward scenario of what would happen to this community and surrounding communities when the fault erupts. Knowing that we have such a big risk literally right under our feet, it's important that we act with urgency and that we're taking care of those members in our community that we know will be disproportionately impacted during an earthquake and during other natural disasters that Hayward will face. These members of our most vulnerable community include, elderly, those that are unhoused, people with disabilities, and I believe this referral really does address understanding who those folks are in our community so that we can prioritize how we respond and the type of help that we provide those that we know will need it when the time comes. So not only, as Councilmember Seibert had mentioned, was this supported by the fire department and by other community organizations, but I think, there's broad support for us making sure that we're taking care of the most vulnerable in our community. So, and I think it's timely. I don't know, if you time this out, but with this referral coming forward, with the update of the emergency plan, with the presentation that we just got tonight, it feels like all roads are leading to being very purposeful in increasing our disaster resilience across the city of Hayward. And this referral gets us closer to doing that. So I'm also happy to be a part of it. And again, just want to thank Councilmember Seibert for his leadership in this space. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you. I am excited to see this referral come to the dais. I do have just a couple of questions that is not clear to me if it would be on the list of information of these residents. One is, would the list also ask questions regarding pets, because pets are so important, particularly for seniors who, that is a family member for them, and sometimes they're only family members. So I just want to make sure that we're also coordinating with Hayward Animal Shelter and making sure that pets are included as part of information on this list, because when there's an emergency, that sometimes is the thing that holds them back on escaping or leaving. So is that going to be something to be considered?
I would be happy to include that as part of the referral. I think the way that I've drafted it here is that I'm going to let the fire department take lead on what those categories are.
Okay.
But I'm sure that they'll hear the feedback from the minutes of this agenda, and I would be in support of that too.
Okay, awesome. So then that will also include information about the type of housing. And then I am assuming there's some privacy issues that we're going to make sure that we resolve and then information is protected.
Addressing privacy was explicitly in the referral itself, and I had spoken to the city manager a little bit about how we protect resident data, and we both feel confident in the way in which we operate currently.
Okay, and then also wanted to know with this list, and this might be something more for the fire department to answer or address. I know that when there's an emergency at schools, I don't know if this practice still happens, but they would have cards where it gives information of what's going on in that classroom. Would that type of activity happen with people on this list? They will have, I don't know, some kind of QR code or something where they can get information about what's going on in that house, or is there something that's like on site that they'll know exactly what's going on at that address when there's something that happens?
I don't think that's currently in the scope of this referral, but I would defer to the fire department or the city manager to discuss if that could be part of it or if that would be a separate project entirely.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and absolutely, I'm very pleased to be supporting this. And so I don't think do we need a vote on this, or we do need a vote on this. Yes, so.
I move the item.
So moved by Councilmember Bonilla.
Second.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to move it. No, that's sorry. Give it to Councilmember Cyrus.
Councilmember Cyrus.
I will second the item.
Before we start out an all-out fight here on the dais, moved by Councilmember Bonilla, seconded by Councilmember Syrup. Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Mr. Mayor, we have a public comment, and it's a virtual public comment.
We do have a public comment, and I'd like to invite Mr. Andrew Gali to go ahead and key up.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Galley, Union President for Hayward Firefighters Local 1909. And I just wanted to express my support for developing Hayward's Vulnerable Needs Registry with the aim of improving disaster readiness for our most vulnerable residents, specifically individuals with special needs such as elderly, unhoused, and people with disabilities. I believe that the implementation of a comprehensive and secure database containing essential information about these individuals will significantly enhance our emergency response efforts. It's evident that during times of crisis, every second counts. Prompt and effective response times are crucial in ensuring the safety and well-being of all our community members, especially those who may require additional assistance. HFD Emergency Service Division currently faces limitations with its resident data, as the county only provides information during disasters. This not only delays critical support, but also adds unnecessary strain on both the residents and our firefighters. By expanding HFD's database to include comprehensive and up-to-date resident information, the response teams will have immediate access to vital details about individuals with special needs. This invaluable resource will enable us to better understand the unique requirements, medical conditions, and other essential information about vulnerable residents in our community. Armed with this knowledge, our response teams can tailor their strategies and allocate resources effectively, resulting in improved response times and ultimately saving more lives. Furthermore, a comprehensive database will foster better coordination, collaboration among various agencies involved in emergency response efforts. With access to accurate and updated information, our firefighters and other relevant organizations can work together seamlessly, pulling our expertise and resources to provide timely support to those in need. The coordinated approach will enhance the overall effectiveness of disaster response and ensure that the vulnerable residents receive necessary care and attention they deserve. I urge you guys to give serious consideration to the referral, which I know you all are, and take necessary steps towards its implementation. By doing so, you'll strengthen the disaster readiness of our community. This endeavor aligns with HFD's commitment to the public safety and will have a profound impact on the lives of our residents and create a safer and more inclusive environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And so I'd like to close public comment. Moved by Councilmember Bonilla, seconded by Councilmember Syra. Madam City Clerk, if you can take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Bonilla Jr.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yes.
Councilmember Roach.
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño. Mayor Salinas.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is an adjournment, and tonight I'd like to adjourn in the memory of a long-time Hayward educator who passed away recently. He was a Hayward Rotarian, and I know Councilmember Cermeño knew him for a long time. But Mr. Thornley, was he was a Hayward Unified School District superintendent. He was a principal for a very long time. And but what I'll do is I want to read a brief passage that was posted about him that was sent to me. HUSD, but the city The city of Hayward mourns the passing of former Superintendent Joel Thornley. Mr. Thornley passed away this month at the age of 91 years old. He retired from the district in 1991 after serving 8 years as superintendent. He was a true Maiden Hayward alumna, having attended Hayward schools as a child, first in a one-room schoolhouse, and eventually graduating from Hayward High School in 1941. He was 91 years old, and he went to elementary school in Hayward. You imagine that. And he was a farmer. Go Farmers, right? Mr. Thornley began his educational career as a Hayward teacher, a vice principal, and then served as a junior high school principal. He went to the district office in 1975, eventually becoming superintendent. He experienced the school district as possibly no one else has, as a student, as a teacher, as a vice principal, a principal, an administrator, and a superintendent. That's incredible. I met Joel Thornley, as, of course, in the Rotary. Of course, my wife was a longtime Hayward employee. All her sisters worked for the school district. Her mom's a retired Hayward Unified employee. Everyone knew Mr. Thornley, and sorely missed, and just such a. But he was a neat guy, though, I have to say. And I don't know, Council Member Cermeño, if you have any other things to say, but just a wonderful man.
Yeah, a tremendous man. That's very sweet, very together, very student-oriented, and that was excellent. So, yeah, definitely missed. Good report.
And so, in memory of Superintendent Joel Thornley, this meeting is adjourned. God bless him.
Recording stop.